Well, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. How is everybody doing today? And yes, nobody had any sound because, yes, I have the sound down so you can hear me better, and you need to hear my voice more than anything. So let me know in about 15 seconds or so if you can hear my voice, and we will certainly be underway shortly. And I got my voice feeding back, so okay, everybody should be able to hear me now. Good morning. Let's take a look. Of course, we're writing last year's winner of the Polar Coaster, which unfortunately the name escapes me at the moment. Um, yes, we are inside of the amazing Five Hop Park, which is something that we've been adding to every single year for the last 7 years. This is year 7 of the contest, so good job, everybody. It's always fun to take a look and have the honor of the winner's coaster being permanently added to this impressive park. So we're here again. Is everybody ready to suffer? I mean, have fun? Yes, everybody's going to have lots of fun. Let's take a look and see what we have in store for you this year. First of all, we have to exit this magnificent ride. So normally I'd be riding on Manic right now to troll Codemaster, but he is not attending this year, so we'll have to do some other fun things. All right, so let's take off here and fly around to see if anything has changed in the park, because there's always some new spot, and that's interesting. What is Doppel-looping doing over there on a new island on a big patch of concrete? That's awfully suspicious. What could that be about? Well, that, everybody, is the challenge this year. Main goal is to make a portable roller coaster. So, what is a portable roller coaster? Well, this is obviously. But we said in the rules this year that we are not limiting what style of coaster you can build. The main key is whatever style of coaster you want to build, that's fine. It just has to look like it could reasonably be taken apart and moved somewhere else without a lot of fuss. Now, one of the big key differences between a normal, fully factory or park installed roller coaster with concrete footers and everything and a traveling roller coaster is the fact that obviously the supports are not attached to footers that go deep into the ground. So to keep these supports from sliding apart from each other, they're all connected, as you can see here. I just imported the Doppel-looping that we have in one of our demo parks to show this off as a pretty good example. And I think these L-beams that are here might be a little flimsy, but they get the point across. You can see that all of these support beams are all attached to central points so that as the forces would push down on these supports and try to push them away, the whole structure is holding it back in place. I added a few things to this one because there's some custom geometry in the real Doppel-looping that has the weights and the structures underneath these box beam loops. So I just made simple box beams like this, and that gets the point across also. So that's what we're looking for when we're talking about building a portable roller coaster. Is one of the first things you're definitely going to have to focus on is that you're not going to be putting footers down as normal. You're going to put your entire support structure to rest on the ground like this and be connected to itself. So that way, as the forces pull it any which way you want to go, then they're being held together like that. Now, we're not structural engineers. We don't know if it's ultimately going to work. It just has to look like it feels like it was built to work and hold everything up like this. Another hallmark of traveling coasters is the efficiency of support trees. So you're going to have support columns like these where you've got multiple levels of track all being held up by the same tree. Because at the end of the day, if it's going to be a transportable roller coaster, you have to be able to move it from fair to fair without having tons and tons of extra steel. So what you see on a lot of premier rides, especially the spaghetti bowl coasters, was pick any point in track and the support tree connected to it was unique to just that point of track, and it didn't touch any other point of track. Well, here is completely the opposite. You can see that this support tree here that I'm looking at on the first drop is also holding up 2 layers of track underneath it, plus the bottom layer down here is also being held up. Cuts down on the amount of steel that's needed. So those are among the things that we're going to be looking for. Now, exactly how you're going to do it, that's completely up to you. We do not have any kind of restriction on what coaster style you're going to use this year. You can use any coaster style you want. We don't care. In fact, we'd like you to be creative and see what you can come up with for different kinds of coaster styles you don't normally see travel. But at the end of the day, it has to look like you could pack it up and move it, reasonably so. If it looks like it's too complicated, too convoluted, then it's going to be a big problem. and we'll drop the score a little bit in that category. And I'll go over the categories a little bit later. You'll also notice we have the old capacity counter back again. We do have a capacity requirement for this year. We're looking for 1,800 riders an hour. So 1,800 riders an hour, it seems like a lot, but it's been going this whole time for Doppel looping here. And when we take a look and see how it's been doing, we've gotten all trains to go by. We've had 62 trains, which is going to work out to about 1,760 or so riders per hour. So it's not quite there. But this also isn't that big of a coaster. We've got 3 trains running on there, timed pretty well so that we don't have too long of a stack, and the train will leave the final brakes with the one going over the lift hill, able to clear the lift hill in time without anything slowing down and stopping. And we're at 1,760 or so riders an hour. One block break in here and one more train, and we easily get to that level. So you don't need to have a really complicated coaster that's running 75 trains with 85 block sections to hit 1,800 riders an hour. But you are going to have multiple trains, and you'll probably need a block or two in the middle of the ride to get there. 1,800 riders an hour, there's no limit on height, on length, speed, inversions, launch, lift. None of those restrictions are in place. In fact, we don't even have a restriction on the size. This square that you see here, you can build it bigger than this if you want. We're not going to stop you. In fact, we actually say in the rules you can flatten out the terrain further if you need to extend it in a certain direction. The main caveat, since this is a traveling coaster, the ground has to be flat. So if you do make more terrain, make sure it's at the same flat level as everything else so that your support structure is completely flat on the ground. But otherwise, there's no restriction on that. Keep in mind, if you build something that takes up the entire island and spreads out in all directions, that's not really going to be very portable, is it? Plus, there wouldn't be any room at the fair for any other rides. So you do have to kind of keep things in moderation, but we're not going to tell you exactly how big you can go at max. If you can build something that looks convincingly enough that it could be moved, then go for it. Too tall might be a problem. If you made a polar coaster and said, yeah, you could move that, and be like, no, we're not. You're not moving a 300-foot tall coaster. We're going to drop your score there. So we have the capacity counter. We've got this flat section of ground that you can build on. You can build anything that you want. The park file is going to be nice and empty. The one rule in terms of terrain, you cannot go underground. You can't go underground with tunnels. You can add tunnels to your coaster. You just can't go underground because, again, portable, you're not going to be drilling holes in the ground. The other restriction is you cannot go over the water at all with any portion of your coaster, any portion of the track, the trains, anything like that. They cannot go over the water. So you are going to be staying over here on this island. You are not going to be heading over into the main portion of the park. That's it for most of the main rules. I'll have to cover the rest in a second. All the rules are in the park description, so you'll be able to see those very easily. In fact, I will bring up the actual competition park now. So we're going to actually go into the editor here. So we're going to go into the park here. All right, when you do submit your park, please, everybody, please change the name of the park file. Add the coaster name and your name as it's shown in the name there. It makes it a lot easier to tell whose is whose. All right, so when you load up the park, it's going to be basically this. There's nothing else in it. All the other park coasters have been removed for optimization of performance. The only thing we've put in there is one lone capacity counter right there. So it's ready to go for you to place anywhere where you track. Super easy to use the capacity counter. All you do is just place it on top of coaster track. The rules are pretty forgiving this year in a different ways. If you can look on park settings, you'll see everything there. Plus, in another 9 minutes, they'll post to Facebook. The link to submit your coaster is right there. Plus, we'll post it on Facebook a little bit later. You can see everything that you need right there. Primary rules, as we mentioned, build one coaster of any style, such as it looks like it can be reasonably dismantled and moved. Some good examples, Schwarzkopf, Eurostar, various Pininfarina coasters. Lots of great things out there. But we want to see a new idea. We haven't seen a new portable coaster in decades, so let's see what you can come up with. One coaster of any style, such as the coaster appears to be portable. You can make it as long, as tall, as fast as you want with as many lifts and launches as you want. Minimum capacity, 1,800 an hour. Track can't go underground or intersect with any scenery, track supports, or the station building. Really, if you hit scenery, it's your own fault because there's no scenery here. You had to add it. Adequate storage for all trains is required, so you have to have some place to park the trains when you're done. Adequate clearance must be maintained at all times. Everybody should know how to use the clearance envelope object. Coaster must be on flat, level land. You can further terraform if necessary, but the land must be flat. And you can't go over water. So the basics of what you have to do. Again, no support, no restriction on track or supports. Probably figured out by now you're not going to be making a wooden coaster since those are not portable in any way, shape, or form. But again, be creative about what you're going to come up with. As long as it seems like it could be moved and looks reasonably so, that's what's going to go with. The judging categories this year, we're going to be looking at, we have 5 categories, which I did not put in here for some reason. By the way, I've got some reference here for the capacity counter on what you need. To get to that, if you have 8 riders per train, you're going to need to have a train pass the capacity counter every 16 seconds. 24 for 12, 32 for 16, and so on and so forth. And if you have 32 riders a train, 1 train every 64 seconds. Very easy to do. So the categories we're going to be looking at this year, we're going to be looking at the technical side of the coaster construction. So that's the quality of your track, how smooth the track is, how well built, how well shaped it is, minimizing pumps. We're also going to be looking at the operation of the coaster itself. So all the various settings you'd set with the track, making sure the trains are not stacking or stacking minimally, that they move through, they don't get stuck, e-stop recovers, all that fun stuff. We're going to evaluate supports. We're going to take a look and see how good you did building the supports overall. Do they look like they're adequate? Are there enough of them to support the load? Are they thick or thin enough as appropriate to support the load at hand? Separately, we're going to evaluate portability. So this is going to be how much whatever you built looks like you could pick it up and move it somewhere. That's separate from the supports, even though they're tied to the supports. This is where we're going to be specifically looking at, did you connect the floor structure together, which is required. You do have to connect the bottom of the supports together. Did you connect it all to make it, does it look like it makes sense? Does it look like it was built in a way that could absorb the forces and keep the support trees from sliding off to the side? Did you build lots of support columns that look like they're holding multiple layers? So again, minimize the amount of things that have to be moved from one place to the other. Next, we're going to be looking at 2 more categories, and I completely am blanking on the other 2 of them. So give me just a moment while I pull that up. In the meantime, do you have any questions? If you do, please put in the chat, and I will take a look and answer as many of the questions as I possibly can. Of course, we're just waiting to see anybody here. All right, so I've seen Natiza saying, does train need at least 10 seconds to enter and leave each station? I mean, realistically, you need at least 45 seconds between each trains. This means you can't work with trains smaller than 1024 seats. On the contrary, yes, you could. You can work with smaller trains. It just means you're going to have to send them out more often. Now, how do you send them out more often? By having realistic dispatch times. Well, the answer there is you're going to have, load 2 or 3 trains at a time. So set up 3 stations in line, loading 3 trains at once, and set the passes to 2. So 2 trains will pass through before another one starts. That's what we're going to take a look at. So it's definitely doable, and I've seen people do that very easily. And as we're showing again, it's not that hard to build everything there. And let's see other questions here. Do you need storage for all trains? Yes, you do need someplace to put the trains. Everybody asks FVD++ allowed. We'd like everybody to use only the tools inside of NoLimits. But at the end of the day, I can't tell if you use the built-in FVD or if you use the outside one, and I'm not watching over your shoulder. You got to remember, you need to have enough time to do everything that you need. So got to keep that in mind, okay? Let's see here. The station included in the storages? No, we're not going to include the station in the storages. You're going to have to go someplace else. Can you use the station storage? Nope. What is a realistic dispatch time? That is an excellent question. If anybody's been to the various fun fairs that you have that travel around Germany, around Europe, the operations are incredibly efficient. So we're going to err on the side of, yeah, you know what? That's a really good crew that they've got multiple people loading the train, hop in, hop out loading, and we're going to go from there. Now, if you choose a more complicated style, such as for some reason a B&M stand-up coaster or a flying coaster, you do need to allow more time to load everybody. But with 32 per train, you need 1 train every 60 seconds, and if you have a good crew, that's very doable. All right, so the scoring categories mentioned: track, supports, we have portability. Creativity and originality is one of the categories. So this is do something unique or different. Inside of that, we don't want to see a bunch of clones of Olympia looping. Certainly that's a good style. Lots of people can do that, but we don't want to see the exact ride. Come up with something cool and unique and original. It's been a long time since those Schwarzkopf masterpieces. Now what could we do with a portable coaster? So originality and creativity is one category, and then the last one is going to be fun. This is going to be the more subjective of the categories. This is going to be where we're going to look at pacing and timing. Does it seem like to us what you achieved is a fun coaster? Is this something that would be an enjoyable ride? Is it going to be kind of painful? Is it going to be boring? Is it going to be slow? Is it going to be too repetitive? Variety is the spice of life here, and just a good ride that builds up over and over again. If you've listened to our live broadcasts of the results before, we gush about the coasters that don't do the same trick over and over and over again. They have a lot of different things to offer. So that's what's going to influence the funs category. So 5 categories. We have track, supports, portability, creativity and originality, and fun. Okay, going back here. If we make a Mobius, does each side have to pass 1800 or just total? Mobius is one coaster, so you have one layout. Yeah, they're going through it twice, but it's going to be one layout. The coaster counter is only going to pick one of those 2 tracks and count every time a train passes that point on that track. So now, if you built 2 separate racing coasters, then yeah, it'd only be whichever side it's going to be checked on. Okay. Moving on to other questions. I can dispatch a Vekoma Jr. in 26 seconds. Yes, you can. Those are easy to do. Does the station have to be that example where it's just one piece of track with where the restraints open? Now, you'll notice that in Doppel looping that I imported in there, by the way, I'm going to move this out of the way. You'll notice that yes, there was no station building for Doppel looping. There was a custom station building built out of 3D objects for that one. Unfortunately, it didn't pull in when I grabbed it, and the point of me grabbing that coaster was just to show a good example of the support structures being connected, not the custom 3D import objects. Yep, so those who are wondering, we're going with the Gerstlauer that just had 2 rows. That's obviously 8 riders, but you can triple that to 24 riders, which is much more easy to do. You have 3 trains loading in 3 separate stations that are all set up in line. And the way the crew would treat that would be, rather than 3 trains, you'd have 1 train that has 6 rows, which is very easy to do. Do the existing coasters in the park affect creativity? What you're going to be building in is a park that's been emptied of all of the existing coasters. There is nothing else in the park at all. So, and you're not going to be taking a look at it. So, if you're wondering creativity for what was originally there, we're not going to be thinking of, oh well, Manic did that. So, we're not going to be thinking in terms of that kind of creativity. Let's see here. Did you say we can make the coaster any size by flattening more terrain? Yes, I did, Alex. You can make the coaster any size you want by flattening out more terrain behind it. No problem there. Now, of course, if you do make something that takes up the amount of space of that spaghetti bowl coaster, or it's a super big long out and back, that looks a lot less portable than something that's more compact and in a square or rectangle of some sort. But if you have something good going, or you want to make it L-shaped, then sure, yeah, flatten out more land if you need it. Just make sure that it's flattened even with this plat of land that we gave you to get started. Let's see. Are air times allowed? Since nothing connects the supports to the ground, so the efforts due to the air times can't be absorbed by the concrete footers, thus the steel base would be lifted. So I would challenge you, they've been doing loops for some time. And when you've got a loop doing it properly, they're not hanging upside down at the top. In fact, I remember hearing that with Schwarzkopf coasters, they had to be designed to always keep positive G-forces on the track. So and on the riders, so that they're not coming out of their seats. Well, if they're upside down, then where's the force of that train trying to go? It's trying to go up. It's trying to lift the loop up, right? Why doesn't it lift? Well, in real life, these heavy bases that are added underneath it, these heavy bases are actually filled with water, so they're counterweighted to make sure that they're not actually going to lift up and fly. So I will assume that you have enough engineering and that you have some water tanks that are built in there and you've got enough heavy weight that yes, airtime is going to be allowable. Now, 2 Gs of airtime on a big heavy B&M train, Maybe not, but a lighter Intamin or Gerstlauer train going over there with a beefy enough structure that's going to hold that top hat in place. Okay, yeah, that'll work. Is there a limitation on the number of mid-course breaks? No. Add as many as you need to be able to get to your capacity count. And yes, you will need a mid-course break or two to get to capacity. Again, when I showed you doppel looping earlier, it's almost there at capacity, and it does not have a mid-course break. If one was added, say, right there, I could dispatch one more train, and it would easily hit the capacity. I got it tweaked to about 1,760 riders. Doesn't take much more. Even adding an extra car per train would probably get doppel looping to the needed capacity requirement. So a lot of options. Don't panic over that 1800. It's easy to do. It does. You don't have to work too hard to get there. For those who haven't used the coaster counter before, all you have to do is just take the box that's already here. You just need to plop it. It's already in your scene. You just need to slide it on top of some coaster track like that, and it will do all the work for you. It'll count the coaster cars, or it'll count the cars and the trains that go by that point. The first one that goes by will start the timer. Then the next 10, the elapsed time between each of the next 10 trains that go by will be counted and averaged, so that'll tell us the number of trains per hour. You multiply that times the number of seats. That will give us the capacity of the ride. 1,800 person per hour Zamperla Valera. I am pretty sure that is a war crime in many countries. I don't think so. But if you want to do it, if you can make it happen, great. So Red Lemons Production says, our launch coaster is good because of the energy and stuff. Yes, you can do a launch coaster. We're not going to set any limitation on that. We're going to assume that you have some kind of magical flywheel in there, or it's powered completely off of, whatever launches photon torpedoes. Don't care. Don't think of that as the restriction. We're not going to be holding you back there. We're going to assume that you have an unlimited power supply available, so you can launch these coaster trains as frequently as needed, and that's not going to be an issue. Isn't an Intamin LSM coaster unrealistic because the thing with the very small clearances on the LSMs are pretty hard to achieve for traveling coasters? I'm going to point to Eurostar, which is a 4-across inverted coaster, where they didn't have cages keeping you from sticking your arms out and your legs out, and they managed to have clearance envelopes that worked on that ride that take up far more space than an Intamin launch coaster. So no, yeah, you can do it. It's been done. So what about switch tracks? If you have time to work out that layout, go for it. Be creative and original. If you can figure out something that's going to work for it, then sure. Does it have to be vanilla coaster styles? No. I'd like to see someone attempt the traveling 4D or the traveling, even a traveling suspended would be really cool, especially because that happened once. Schwarzkopf built a traveling suspended coaster. It beat Arrow making their first suspended coaster. Now, it didn't work very well. There's a lot of things they had to figure out, but it did operate at one of the fairs. So, yeah, let's see what a traveling suspended coaster would look like. Somebody asking, do I have a bird and can we see it, or is that something else I can hear? Yes, I do have a parrot that's chirping in the other room, and she's probably wanting some breakfast at this point. Think with them with the clearance and the LSM and the trains. We're not going to be picky on that one. If we can tell what you're going for, we're not going to be sitting there like, oh, the LSM fins are cutting through the track, blah, 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 or cutting through the coaster car because you're doing something different. Now, that being said, custom trains aren't really allowed for this contest. Any custom scenery is not going to be evaluated. We're just going to delete it. So use all of the stock trains. Don't use an imported custom train because we're not going to see it. We're going to go with the stock custom coaster in there. We can tell what you're building. If you're building a launched Intamin LSM, we're not going to sit there and say, well, you didn't have the single fin in the middle, so clearly we're going to dock you points. No, we know what you're going for. That's not going to be an issue. Is a switch script allowed? Only the one that's built in. Again, you're focusing on that. If you can figure out how to make it work, that's fine. But no prepackaged scripts is generally the rule because we don't want you spending time on that one. Isn't a 4D way heavy to travel? Yeah, but if you could build enough of a structure that makes it look like it could, we'll see what you could come up with. So we're not trying to keep you limited in any one thing. That's why we didn't say you're stuck on only certain styles. Be creative. See what you can come up with. Can you do an RMC Raptor? Well, you won't have the trains available or the track, but you can make something that's implied like that. Custom train textures. We're not going to look at any custom scenery or custom train textures. Do not waste time on custom scenery or custom train textures. We're not going to look at it. And those who are asking those questions, my guess is that you're new to this, to a 5 hours of power, because you do not have time to edit custom train textures. You need to spend all your time building your coaster, building the supports, getting it all up and running and tested, making sure that the track will actually complete and that you'll get a full capacity count. The trains will make it all the way around over and over and over again. We've seen some that were brilliant coasters in the past, but they couldn't complete a second lap because one of there were missing friction tires on one transfer track, which meant that the trains stopped and stacked and could never restart. So let's see here. Raptor should be a very good choice for movable coaster, but you could get an RMC Raptor, yeah. Yeah, and as Tyler is pointing out, thank you, Tyler, you do not have time for car textures. You do not have time for custom scenery. You need to first get your track built, second, get your track supported, get the base connected, and get it all tested, make sure it's working. By the time people are done with all of that, they're barely squeaking by and getting their entries in. Except for Codemaster, who, although not competing this time, would try the portable 4D coaster for about 2 hours before he realized he needed to build something else. Do you have to have fences around the ride? No, you do not. There are fences there. If you have time after to put them in, great, but we're not going to be looking at you building fences around the ride. That is a great question. Okay, we have only a couple of minutes left before the park will post. It's going to post to Facebook. Initially, I will get it reposted to No Limits Central in the main thread. So that way everybody's going to have it available to them as soon as it goes live. But look on our Facebook page. It will go live exactly at the right time there. So be ready for it. Is the park going up on the exchange? When it's done, yes. But in the meantime, what we're going to post in just a moment is going to be the link to download the coaster. I'm going to get it ready to go and post in just a second here. Any final questions before we go? Why is Code not entering this year? He's actually traveling and off-riding, doing something, but he is busy with a few other things. So I'm glad that he's out there having fun. Okay. Anything else? Do we have to build a station that can fit on a trailer? The standard station building is fine. We understand that it's obviously not built to fit on a trailer. That's fine. You'll be a good shape. You'll probably want to not use the roof though. And we are live. The park should be available for download at this time. Now, of course, you guys are on a slight delay, but I've posted it to No Limits Central in the chat, into the thread for 5 hours of power, and the Facebook page should be live now with the file. So, good luck, everybody. If you have any questions, of course, you can reach out to any of our official channels, and we'll be happy to help you out, or email us at nolimitscontest@gmail.com, and we'll help you out as quickly as we can. Thank you all. Good luck.